Welcome to the Cox Community Connection, highlighting organizations, events, and people from around our local community.
Hello and welcome to this month's episode of Cox Community Connection. We have a great show in store for you as we're going to talk with the Eleanor Johnson Youth Center in Fort Walton Beach and find out about some drive-in movies in downtown Pensacola. But first, we got some very important information to share with you this month as we're going to talk about hurricane season and other disaster preparedness that you need to be doing as the season progresses. Joining me to talk about that is John Dosh. He is the emergency manager for Escambia County. John, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on.
So the emergency manager, kind of what does that position do? And I know during storms or times of disaster, we hear about the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. Give us a little background, a little information on what your role is and what the EOC does.
Well, one of my main roles is managing the staff and the Emergency Operations Center, which is down on W Street. And one of the main roles of the Operations Center is we bring all of the major players to the table, government players, not-for-profits, as well as corporate. Those key entities that will help us respond to whatever disaster we're dealing with, we bring them to the table in the Emergency Operations Center, and we all work together and communicate together, coordinate the response that's needed for the event. And certainly it's maintaining relationships throughout the year is one of my major tasks.
So how does that model work? I guess it's proven over time to work better when you have everybody in one central location. You are able to respond better to the disaster?
Absolutely. Having those live bodies there at the table, those points of contact, liaisons as we call them, with the different entities is the best way of doing it. We've tried doing it electronically. We've tried doing it where we can do it by phone, but the best way is really to have that liaison there at the table that you can communicate with and work through the event that you're dealing with.
And of course, so far this year, you've already had to activate, I guess, twice.
Been a busy year.
Been a busy year already, and we're just starting with the hurricane season.
Right.
So hopefully you won't have to activate again, but you've had the ice storm and the floods. Tell us a little bit about those situations, those events, and how the EOC functioned and the outcome.
Okay, starting off with the ice storm, or the first part of the year. I went into New Year's thinking, wow, 2014 is going to be a great year, everything's going to be great, and it went downhill pretty quick. So dealing with the ice storm was a challenge because this part of the world, we don't usually deal with those types of things. So one of the things I was most proud of during that is the community listening to the warnings that we were providing not to get out and move around. And they basically listened. And that made the whole incident a lot easier for us to deal with because it was our emergency response community was very challenged with dealing with the ice as well because we don't have chains and we don't have stud tires and all those types of things. We don't have salt equipment and all those. So it really caused some challenges for us to move around and provide the emergency response that we're challenged to do. So.
But you have to prepare for all types of disasters, I'm sure. So like you said, we can handle the storms, maybe the floods and the hurricanes, but this is something that's totally foreign to Northwest Florida. But you guys, it appears that did a great job with the response and everything.
The emergency response community, they really stepped up. They did a phenomenal job. They were very, very challenged. When you get a fire truck as big as a fire truck is and it's sliding sideways down the road, these guys, they're actually putting their lives on the line yet again just to get to wherever the emergency is. And with everybody staying at home and kind of, sheltering in place, if I can use that term, it lessened the amount of calls that we had to respond to. And we had a lot of traffic accidents from people sliding into each other. But for the most part, with everybody staying home, I keep crediting the public because they really listened and it made a big, big difference.
Good. And then I guess about 2 or 3 months later, we had the torrential downpours, which led to the flood. And
right.
I guess that was another opportunity that the EOC was really able to shine and work together.
When you get over your half of your annual rainfall in less than 24 hours, that's certainly going to cause some problems, and it did here. We had some major impacts from the floods, and just getting people, our liaisons, getting them from their homes to the Emergency Operations Center was a challenge. Some of them could not get there because as a result of the water, and the message to them was just stay put, stay safe. We'll work around those issues and try to provide the services to the community that they deserve and that they expect.
Absolutely, and that the floods, it seemed like most of that rain dropped, in the matter of about 6 or 8 hours. So that was real fast. They weren't able to get there. But with the hurricane, obviously you have more time to prepare. So let's move on to hurricane season a little bit and talk about that preparation. But let's look at it from a residential or business standpoint.
Okay.
What are some of the things people need to be doing? Some of the viewers at home, it's the start of hurricane season. Maybe they're new to the area, or since it's been 10 years since Ivan, some people might get complacent.
Sure.
What are the things people need to be doing right now to prepare for hurricane season?
Well, certainly the first thing they need to do is make sure they have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, it's the development of that plan, and that's both for the resident as well as the business. Understanding what you're going to do if you're impacted, how you're going to do it, what's going to be required to help you do whatever that is important, and having that plan in place. For the family, it's important to have everybody involved in the planning process. Sit around the dinner table one night and just start going through the questions. Are we insured? Do we have enough insurance? Do we need flood insurance? And I think we all recently found out that we probably all need to have some form of flood insurance. Do we have a disaster kit? If we're going to leave, where are we going? How are we getting there? It's just asking yourself the questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And that will help themselves build that disaster plan. Write it down. Just get you a 3-ring binder and put some pen to paper and make some notes, making sure everybody understands what's going to happen, who's going to be doing what, and where you're going to go if you are leaving. So it's just those basics, having that information together. And if you don't have a kit, get out there and start getting one now. There's all kinds of information that needs to be in your kit. You know, important information about who you are, maybe your insurance paperwork, Social Security information. Insurance paperwork is important, making sure you've got documentation that shows your belongings. I typically encourage people every year at the beginning of hurricane season to take a video of your house. See, with the phones that we have today, you can do that very easily. Walk around your home and do a video of every room. That way, if you do have a loss, you can show your insurance agent what your house looked like before the damage.
Makes it a whole lot easier when you're filing that claim.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what it's all about, to try to, once you do have an impact, which can be tragic, trying to get you back to normal as quickly as possible, that can certainly help.
Sure. And also in the kit, what other things do people need to have? Food, clothing, medicines?
Yeah, understanding that hurricanes will typically impact our infrastructure, so that means our electricity could go out. That means the water wells that are typically run off electricity will go out, so you won't have water. It's those types of things that you need to plan for, and if make sure you've got non-perishable food items, the bottled water, or those things like that. Medications that are important for you and your family. If you have infants, make sure you have baby food.
Absolutely.
Just the standard things that, if you sit down and make a plan, are obvious, but in the heat of a disaster, you may not think of.
Yeah.
Make sure you're taking care of the pets. Don't forget the pets. If you do a generator, a lot of people choose to go out and buy portable generators. Make sure that you're being safe with the generator. Understand generators cause carbon monoxide. You don't want to run the generator in a house. It needs to be outside. With that, you need to make sure you got the appropriate extension cords and your appropriate containers for storing gasoline or diesel, depending on what type you have. It's just going through those entire process and making sure that you're being as safe as possible during the recovery process.
And I know one of the the taglines that you guys at Escambia County have used over the years are the first 72 are on you.
Correct.
Can you kind of explain what that means and how residents need to be ready for that?
The mindset is that we want the public to be prepared to take care of themselves. Government can step in and help in certain ways, but it takes time for them to bring assets in from outside because you don't want your resources here to be damaged by the storm, so they keep them out of the region until after the storm passes. Well, it takes time to do an assessment to determine what the impact is, what kind of help is needed, and then getting those assets rolling in. And the determination is basically if we can get the general public to be prepared for a minimum, and I need to stress minimum, of 72 hours, a lot of those resources will start rolling in within that period of time and can be here when the need is. We recommend people being prepared for a week to 2 weeks if they can, but a minimum of 72 hours.
Okay, so that's kind of the before storm stuff. Right. A quick overview of that. Let's talk about during the storm. As a hurricane's making landfall, where do people need to be sheltered if they decide to stay here and not evacuate? Where do they need to be in their house? What kind of preparations can they do to their home and their property for the landfall?
First of all, they need to make sure that their property is not in an evacuation zone. The reason we evacuate predominantly is for water, the storm surge, and that's the water that comes in from the ocean, the saltwater inundation that comes in from the ocean. We have maps available on our website that can show them. They can actually type in their address in a certain link on the website, and it'll tell you what evacuation zone you live in if you are in an evacuation zone. If you are, you need to leave that home. Find another place, higher ground to shelter, maybe with a family member or a friend in town that doesn't live in the evacuation zone. If you're not in the evacuation zone and you choose to stay in your home, certainly staying away from windows and doors. It's very important that you look at taking protection measures for your home in the way of window shutters, or if you have a newer home, the newer codes actually require window laminate to protect from flying debris. Certainly making sure that you're staying away from those outer walls, because that's where all the pressure and the debris are going to be hitting. So if during the height of the storm, interior rooms, bathrooms are typically very good because there's very few windows or doors. It's typically one door in, one door out. You have all the water, you have sewer sanitation there if need be, and that's a great room, safe room to be in, typically in a home, because it's normally interior room.
And then following the storm, as residents go outside and start to take assessment of the damage, give us a few tips real quick about power line safety. You already talked about generators a little bit, but about the importance of not backfeeding and things of that nature. What should residents be doing?
Typically going out and doing assessment is important, but you've got to be safe when you do this, because there's going to be a lot of hazards out there. First and foremost, as you mentioned, power lines could be down. Just because they're down on the ground doesn't mean they're not energized. So you need to stay away from those things. If there's power lines on the ground, assume they're energized or charged, whatever term you want to use, and stay away from them. Try to make a report of it. If your cell phone's still operable, make the phone call, let Gulf Power know that your line's down and there's a hazard there, or just dial 911 and let them know. Certainly going out, if you've got a lot of water in the area, be cautious of reptiles, okay? Because if you're high ground, the reptiles want to be on high ground as well. Absolutely. So they're going to come to wherever you are. You need to be cautious because they're going to be out and about, and you need to make sure you're watching for those things. A lot of tree and vegetative debris. People want to get out there, and their first experience with a chainsaw. Usually we see emergency room spike visits because of chainsaw related injuries. If you haven't got experience with chainsaw safety, get it now, or maybe call somebody in to help you with that kind of stuff.
And of course, hurricanes strike in the summer months, in the hottest months. So you want to be careful with the heat, and take those precautions as well.
Hydrate's important.
Absolutely. John, thank you so much for joining me today. We're out of time, but I appreciate those important tips. Now, you mentioned a website. Is there a website people can go to get more information?
There is. It's www.bereadyescambia.com. It's all that information's on that website for us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I
Thanks
appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks.
Stay with us. When we come back, we'll talk about drive-in movies in downtown Pensacola.